No, okay. Okay, it works. Good morning, everybody. Welcome here today. Good morning to our interpreters. I ask you to use your headphones now because I'd like to switch in my mother tongue into German. So, okay, some are happy. Ja, guten Morgen, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'd like to wish you all a very warm welcome to the home of organised civil society here in the European Union. And we work together here with the Committee of the Regions. My name is Peter Schmidt. I am the chair of the Standing Observatory for Sustainable Development here at the EESC, and I am very happy that we are working together with PAN to organise this event and enter into a discussion today on many different issues, and hopefully this will be a source of inspiration for further debate. So I'll give you a couple of pointers as to how things work here at the EESC, because I'm not going to presume that everyone is well informed as to what the Home of Civil Society does, what we do here at the EESC. So the EESC is divided up into three groups, equally divided. So Group 1 is the employer organisations, Group 2 the trade unions, and Group 3 various interests such as nature preservation organisations, agricultural organisations. So you can guess which group I'm from, given the fact that I'm here today. No, you guessed wrong. I'm from Group 2. I'm not from a nature protection organisation. I am from a trade union. So what do we do here in the EESC? Well, how can I put it? We come up with suggestions, we pen opinions, we take opinions for the political decision makers, which are also good for use by consumers. And basically, we aim to strike a compromise at the end of the day. So there are some people who say, okay, compromises, it's to nobody's liking, but that's not necessarily the case here at the EESC. This is one of our strengths. In the EESC here, we are able to actually come up with viable compromises. I'll give you a couple of examples as to what we work on. Quite recently, I was the rapporteur on an opinion on sustainable food policies in Europe. And I think this also touches on the heart of the discussion we're going to be having today. In this opinion, we call on the EU and its member states to establish sustainable food policies. Now, of course, we've heard from the food industry and we've heard from agriculture and we've heard from retailers, but there's no food policy that's formed by the civil society, and that is why we wanted to chip in and look at the bringing in experts to help us to set up a conference and actually look at how we can implement such policies. Now, the Commission is looking at reviewing drinking water rules, and of course pesticides play a role here, pesticides getting into water, and of course we draw up opinions that are then sent to the Commission and we make it crystal clear what our position is. And of course we're going to make it crystal clear that we need water that is safe, that's not privatised, it's not run by multinational companies. And of course we want to really underline that. We work hand in hand with conservation groups And we have been working on biodiversity in many different areas for a long time now. We're very quick to get on onto that particular issue and looking at how we can work together to react. So what we do here is organise a European-wide process here on the circular economy. Now, you know that the Commission is talking about this, and we want to work together with the Commission to organise a European platform for the exchange of best practices, but also to look at the problems that we have to grapple with in terms of this issue. So my task here is to not only monitor the sustainability goals, but also to look at how we as a civil society can play a leading role here in Europe in terms of the UN SDGs. Now, some of the older people amongst you in the audience will know about the qualitative growth debates that we had. Now, obviously, in this area, we have a lot of talk about growth, and people saying, okay, growth is one of our problems, and then they say, no, that's not the problem. The problem is how you define growth. So if we just look at volumes, or whether we actually look at the bigger picture, look at social issues, for instance, or look at the education sector, for instance. If you have classes of 5 or 6 children, you need enough teachers. So this is a form of growth that comes in under Sustainable Development Goal 4 of the UN. You need to develop sustainable education. So that's one example. So I don't want to go down into the nitty-gritty of all of this, but I would just like to invite you to work hand in hand with us. We have come up with a range of opinions on relevant issues, looking at a different economic model, a different form of the economy, moving away from this, from what we have at present, and looking at how we can make progress. That's a very important point. And here in the EESC, in terms of sustainability, we do an awful lot. Here on the roof, we actually have beehives. We can actually produce honey, which is, of course, free of pesticides. And I expect this to be a day which will provide us with a great deal of inspiration. And without further ado, I would now like to hand the floor over to Joanna Drake, the Deputy Director General from DG Environment at the European Commission. Thank you very much.
The whole conference,
Sorry, first time.
No problem. Thank you very much, Peter Schmidt, President of the Sustainable Development Observatory and the European Economic and Social Committee. Excellent start for this conference.
Okay, you have to take that one.
Now it should work, right? Thank you. We will overcome all the issues, I guess. Thank you. So thank you very much. And very welcome also from my side. I'm the second Peter today. My name is Peter Franceschi, and I'm working for ECLAI. ECLAI is an international and European organization of sustainable cities. So we work on all topics of urban sustainability in an integrated way. We co-organize this event together with PAN Europe, Pesticide Action Network, and in partnership with the European Economic and Social Committee, which, as it was already eloquently put, is the house of us, the citizens, the European citizens. So let's inspire Brussels today. I know it's not easy to come in the house of the citizens because of all the security, but sooner or later we are all here. I will moderate till the coffee break, and then I will give over to Cecilia Delgado. If you could just stand up so that I see you. Thank you. I will introduce Cecilia after the coffee break. Why are we here today? Let me check my notes. No, I'm very happy that we managed to have 3 buzzwords that mean really a lot for sustainable cities in one title. It's citizen-driven, it's nature-based, and it's resilient. Imagine all cities in Europe and all towns in Europe to be citizen-driven, to be nature-based, to be resilient. How would Europe look like? Today we will hear inspiring, hopefully mind-blowing examples. We have two European green capitals. The current one is the Nijmegen from the Netherlands. Where's the gentleman? You can already come up, Ton, to the panel, so that because we have also a time issue. And then we have the European Green Capital for next year from Oslo. Where's the gentleman? Please have a seat as well. I think they can definitely show us something, because after all, the European Green Capital is considered the Oscar of the green cities. So I'm sure they have an interesting story, but we also thought about the very small towns. So we have two small giants. One is Beauchevin. Vincent, please take your seat as well. In Belgium, because who says that to see the light you have always to go outside the country? Also in Beauchevin, for many years, they have been doing together with the citizens, developing together the urban sustainability plans. And then we have Mals later in the coffee break, which is in the atelier just around the corner. You will see an exhibition also about Mals. It's a small town, but they challenged the farmers' lobby, the politics, the big lobby, and we will see how that went together with the citizens. So let me also mention that two projects contributed to this conference. There is on one hand SMR, Smart Major Resilience, which, as the title says, is all about resilient cities. It's coming to an end, but I'm very glad that Vasilis Latinos, who is involved in the project, is here. Also, he can tell you all about ICLE's work on resilience, nature-based projects. And then we have this other project, which is called InnoForestD. You see here Innovation for Sustainable Development.net. Here I'm very glad we have Fernando from TNO here, who can tell you more. He's the project coordinator. The modest ambition of InnoForestD is to be a global network of networks. So essentially, it's about overcoming the fragmentation of all these initiatives and projects and networks around eco-innovation, green economy, and sustainability. Last point about the language. You can talk in Deutsch, English, French, Francais, and Italiano. So no worries, the interpreters are all there. And there is also a web stream. So try to look good when you pose a question. Enough chit-chat. I have to be very merciless about time management because we started a bit late. And the coffee break is supposed to start at 11:15, but we will manage, so I will ask all speakers as well to really focus on the essential part, on the main message that you want to convey, and I will have to manage the time carefully. I think that's it from my side, so sorry, I just had to give this introduction. Ms. Joanna Drake, we are very honored that you are here. Joanna Drake is the Director General of DG Environment. I know you are really a champion on circular economy, and maybe you can also tell us how this nature-based and citizen-driven finds its way into the circular economy, into the EU policies. And I give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and also the other Peter. I'm Joanna Drake. I'm the Deputy Director General, not there yet, of DG Environment. But yes, I believe not only in circular economy and in the city's power to make it happen. I also believe that within the cities and within the leaders in the cities and the citizens themselves, there is the power for Europe to actually be seen to be effective. But I'll first of all thank the ICLE and also Pesticides Action Network for organizing. Thank you for the EESC for hosting. And I also want to thank the author of this wonderful book. I think he's sitting there, which is called Precautionary Tale. I'm looking forward to reading this. And it's about how citizens can make a huge wave of difference to where they live. So I encourage you to have a look as well. So we are just out of Green Week. At the end of May, the European Commission has been, for the last good number of years, organizing so-called Green Week. This year, the accent was on green cities. And perhaps you might want to know a little bit more about what we have noticed during this week and how we're going to take it forward, which is, I think, the key question. First of all, we have noticed that we have been inspired by some remarkable discoveries. First of all, is there a concept of green city? Yes, there is, and it is very much alive and well and across the whole of Europe. We have seen urban farms. We have heard of reclaimed industrial sites. We watch as waterways are restored to their former glory. We have learned about smart energy grids equipping cities for the challenges of the future. We visited energy efficient social housing, smart transport networks, and circular economy cafes. Time and again, we've seen cities redesigned with the needs of citizens in mind. Streets reclaimed for pedestrians and parks transformed into biodiversity havens. We've also seen how brave cities are. We've seen them taking brave decisions about their future. Some are pushing to become carbon neutral, others are settling ambitious waste reduction targets. Others are still looking to a future with no combustion engines at all within their city boundaries. Were there results? Well, we have seen clear results as well. We have seen policy decisions that delivered, and that delivered clean air for the city's inhabitants and visitors. We have seen policies that have delivered clean water. We have seen genuinely circular economies taking root, and also low levels of noise. And therefore, we have definitely evolved from simply having green dreams. It is happening, and it is happening all around the continent. They are showing that this future is within our grasp. Maybe I'm sounding too enthusiastic for you this morning, but when I see evidence like this, and when my colleagues who are even more critical and perhaps a little bit more skeptical sometimes about how cities or how member states are actually delivering on 40-plus old European environmental acquis, and when at the same time, in the same DG, we are handling infringements against member states, and the DG Environment remains the biggest member state, the biggest DG in the European Commission with the biggest number of infringements open for member states. We have over 1,000 infringements open. You know, there's a lot of reason to bog you down and to actually not allow you to be enthusiastic. But I am this morning because we see that things are happening on the ground. And I think, had you been also in Green Week, and maybe some of you have, you probably would have been taken over by this wave of reality also hitting you, because there isn't only the bad reality, there's also the really good, positive reality happening, and it's actually being genuinely engaged in by the citizens. Of course, improving the quality of life in a city has to happen, has to keep on happening, and what is more important is that it is within reach, and there's evidence about this happening. We all want to be in a better urban environment, and we all want to be kinder to our planet. After Green Week this year, the question isn't really, can we do it? We know we can. It's not, what do we need to do? Because we've seen so many good examples. The real question is, what's holding us back from doing more or from starting to go in this direction? The question is, why aren't more cities engaged along this path? Why aren't these inspiring examples followed more widely? What has happened for these great examples to become the norm? And what should happen for these great examples to become the norm? There is no doubt about the need for change. When we consider that the world's urban population is growing by more than 1 million people a week, then you begin to understand the scale of the challenge we are facing. The solutions are within reach, but how can we make them systemic? And I think this is really the key element. what is the one essential element you always need to make a city green and sustainable? From Green Week, but not only from there, of course, we could really concretely and tangibly see that it's all about good governance. It's about vision translated via good governance into impactful results. Of course, you have to have good leadership and a long-term vision of where the city will go, but it has to be developed through an inclusive process of collaboration. You have to involve citizens who actually make up the cities. You need to involve all the departments of a city administration: transport, water, waste, health, education, and so on. You need to talk with local businesses and associations and get them engaged too. The vision has to be developed with everyone in mind, and more than anything, an urban strategy that is built to last and to rely also on citizens' participation. Building sustainable urban development with plans that are fit for the future is primarily a matter of strengthening that connection between citizens and their city administration. The value of this collaboration has been brought home some time and again. It is a distinguishing feature of the winners of the Green Capital and Green Leaf Awards, like Nijmegen in the Netherlands and Leuven in Belgium and Vitoria-Gasteiz in Spain. Actually, not the next week, but the following week, I shall be chairing the jury to choose the next Green Capital winners and Green Leaf Capital winners, and it's always a fascinating experience, which obviously lights up a good beacon for others to follow, because it is so much concrete and on the ground. But one key feature that runs across any participant, any candidate for this award, is the citizen participation and how they have managed to find a way of actually syncing all the energies from the different parts of the city, with sometimes conflicting interests, very conflicting interests, but they have made them come to some sort of synchronization to move in one momentous direction towards having a better environment. The connection is vital between citizen participation and the policymakers, because obviously policymakers also want to be seen to be effective, not just producing policies, documents on paper. And that is why the European Commission is holding Europe-wide citizens' dialogues. Dialogues are a two-way process. They give us the chance to explain what is really happening inside the institutions and the thinking behind our proposals. And they show that we are a listening commission, and we are open to people's concerns, to your concerns, and we want your ideas on how we can improve. Our concern is very simple, actually. It boils down to one simple line, and that is we want to improve people's lives. This is why the whole of Europe and the European Union has been created. For instance, this is the reason why we have recently revisited the waste legislation package, raising the targets for municipal waste recycling and moving away from landfilling. It's why we are proposing to cut down on single-use plastics. This has been taken up with a real roar in the cities and by citizens. It's sort of telling us, cheering us on, way to go, Commission, this is what you should be doing, and maybe what you should have done also some years back. And this is also why we have brought in improved standards for drinking water. It's also the thinking behind the European Action Plan for Nature and for strengthening the Natura 2000 network. And of course, it explains why we take air quality so seriously, given the enormous impact it has on citizens' health. Only a few weeks back, the Commission took action against 9 member states on the quality of air being produced, if you like, in the cities. Green Week also saw the launch of a new Green City tool. Now, what is this? It goes in the same direction we're talking about. It helps city administration and, in fact, anyone interested in a good city governance, because you can use this tool as a source of information, both about the current state of affairs and about how we can all make cities greener and more sustainable. It's an idea that has been in formation, in design, if you like, for a while. And it's part of the EU urban agenda. We set out the idea of the tool in the Pact of Amsterdam, which sees the Commission, the NGOs, the local associations and member states working very closely together on key issues that affect citizens' lives, such as air quality, nature and biodiversity and the circular economy. The ultimate aim is better policy making, I would say timely policy making as well, for urban areas in Europe with an expanded knowledge base and better access to funds. As we all know, the best dialogue in the world can only take you so far. Substantial damage also required a funding element as well. So I'm glad to be able to tell you that the proposal for the next EU budget for 2020 to 2027 has a very marked sustainability agenda. This is the first time that climate action and environmental protection have featured so prominently. The LIFE programme, the most important fund in terms of climate and environmental policy objectives, will grow considerably with an increase to almost 5.5 billion euros. There is also a very strong environmental focus in the funds that are useful for the urban environment, such as the Cohesion Funds and the Regional Development Fund. Green investments and the transition towards a circular economy are part of their top two objectives, a smarter Europe and greener Europe. So, a word to the wise. The opportunities are there. We look forward to your applications. All throughout Green Week, we have spoken of the need to involve citizens more closely in the decision-making process. And this is the single most important factor in any good governance. It's a theme that transcends party politics, one that acknowledges the value of contributions from all quarters. And the theme for next year's Green Week will be how European green law is put into practice. In other words, implementation, but perhaps it's a little bit less sexy to talk about it like that. We will, amongst others, highlight the environmental implementation review potential, which is something that we have put into action in the last couple of years, and we are engaging directly with citizens and the authorities at the regional and local level, apart from the national ministries, obviously, of the environment, in order to review how environmental law actually is being implemented in the cities and in the country as a whole. And we issue reports once a year, just as a sort of health bulletin from the environmental perspective of member states. And this will, of course, empower those who would want to see better results to know exactly where to push, in what direction to push. Well, I've talked a lot about dialogue, so I'll stop monopolizing the podium, and I would like to thank you for giving me your attention and also the opportunity to speak on this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanna Drake. And sorry for the lapsus, but after your supportive words and what you said, you would deserve to be Director General of DG Environment. No, thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and I know you have to leave soon afterwards, so thank you very much, and keep on engaging for cities, because after all, in Europe, most of us citizens, more than 70%, are living in cities. So green cities means eventually more quality of health, more quality of life for Europeans. So thank you very much, Joanna Drake. Maintenant, je vais donner la parole.
And now I'd like to pass the floor to François Verret, who's the chairman of Pan-Europe, the Pesticides Action Network.
Emmanuel Macron or EDPF, please put on your headphones. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much indeed. I won't say that I speak exactly the same language as Emmanuel Macron, but that's another issue which we won't discuss here. So thank you very much indeed. I'd like to thank the microphone's been cut off, sorry. The previous speakers, the Deputy DG, Mr. Schmidt, and the other organisers who've organised this event together with PAN. And of course, thank you here. Now, there are more and more European citizens who are concerned about their health and about the balance and the state of the environment. Recently, we've heard about the fact there's been a drop of 80% in insects, so 80% of insects that have disappeared in the past few years. We see that birds are disappearing. In my country, about a third of all birds, the bird population has disappeared over 15 years. And all of this is obviously very shocking to European peoples, and part of the disappearance of bee colonies has to do with changes in the landscape, but also the huge, massive use of pesticides in towns and in rural areas. And we have a pesticide plan in France, but despite this, we've seen that there's been actually an increase in use. That we've seen there are a lot of things that affect our health and the environment, and population pressure on the environment is increasing as well, which makes sense. I mean, people want to live far away from smokestacks, from factories and dangerous chemicals and pesticides, or whether those pesticides are used in towns or in agriculture. We've seen there's been a European Citizens Initiative recently that's been quite successful on the use of pesticides in particular, more than 1 million signatures over a month, the best ever, most successful ever. And this shows that people are more aware of this and that they want to improve the environment they live in. And these demands from our citizens have been addressed at local authorities, at regional authorities, national authorities, and we've seen that the citizens have been involved in many things, and there are a lot of towns and local organisations that are working together with citizens in order to try and reduce and even ban the use of pesticides. In Brussels, the city of Brussels, for example, which wants to ban the private use of pesticides, and there are other towns, other examples that we can think of. I won't name them all, and my apologies if I've forgotten to mention a lot of people, but for example in Ghent, in Copenhagen, which I think was named the EU Green Capital. And politicians and citizens and organisations in all these towns work together in order to take ambitious measures to protect the environment, nature and the populations. And we're very glad to see that we see more and more of these things in Paris, for example, for years now. There is practically no use of pesticides anymore, and recently, in fact, the whole country, thanks to law introduced by the senator here in the room, aimed at banning the use of pesticides in public spaces. In practically all public spaces now, that is the case. There are some areas in which it's a little bit more difficult to do so, such as cemeteries or sports areas, but we need to try and think about how to do that, because we like to keep our cemeteries and sports areas completely clean, whereas if you look at other countries, in the UK, for example, the situation is quite different. So we have something to learn there. So a lot of progress is being made, but unfortunately, things are not going completely well everywhere. If we think, for example, of the small village of Mals in the south of Tyrol, in Italy, where the mayor's actually been taken to court because of a pesticide ban that we have introduced in the village after having carried out a referendum, and the majority of people voted in favour of this ban. And I think the EU, the European Commission, should not abandon such towns. They need to support them and create a legislative and political framework that can support them and will support any initiatives taken by the population to ban pesticides. And there are still hundreds and thousands, perhaps even millions of Europeans who live on the edges of towns, villages, cities, near agricultural areas, and who are not truly protected against pesticides that are often used only a few meters away from their windows. And together with other NGOs, we analyse, we assess the situation. We look at children who live in such areas and carry out analyses, and we find that they're exposed to dozens of pesticides and a lot of these that affect people's health. And there is a brochure with people's rights. It states what you can do with lawyers in the case of if you're be affected by pesticides. There are a lot of things that can be done, but unfortunately most people don't know exactly how to go about this. And of course we have the agricultural policies that we need to work on, but we need to try and reduce the use of pesticides in them. So there are a lot of efforts that are being done to try and support measures being taken at all levels in order to make sure that these dangerous chemicals are used far away from areas where people live, where children live, pregnant women, etc. So a lot of work is already being done by towns and cities. We need to support them. We need to extend these initiatives. And we need to make sure that the EU can come up with a very strong legal framework that will help us to protect our citizens and protect the initiatives that people are taking. And that's why we in Pan-Europe and other NGOs are trying to work on this, and we hope that the message will come across. And the Deputy DG has already said it. It's a political issue, but it's not really party political. And I think it's in all our interest to make sure that the efforts that are made by grassroots organisations in villages and towns are connected at a global level in order for us to protect our citizens against pesticides. So we need to reduce their use as much as possible, banning their usage in urban areas. And I'd like to leave it at that. It's been a brief few words, and we'd like to leave a few more minutes, as we agreed with the Chairman Schmidt, so that we can get an explanation as to what's happened in France, because we now have this law that is aimed at banning the use of pesticides in urban areas. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you very much, and thank you for passing me the floor. I'd like to say, I can't tell how happy I am to be here today, and I'd like to thank Tanja Robe, my friend with who I work very closely together on text. He's also a politician, and he's helped hugely to provide us with legal and scientific information in order to draft our text. So I'm simply a member of parliament in France, elected in 2011. Before that, I was a mayor in my town. I fight for the environment. I'm an environmentalist more than ever now, and I've worked a lot on Agenda 21 in particular. And one of the measures we've taken was zero pesticides, something that started in 2006, 2007, an initiative we worked on together with our citizens, and we managed to pass this. And when I became a Member of Parliament in 2011, one of the first things that I did after an information mission on pesticides and their impact on public health and the environment. And I have to say I got a lot of support for my convictions, and I introduced the draft bill aimed at non-agricultural pesticides, so local organisations and household usage. And I really insisted. People were telling me it's impossible, but particularly because of Europe, they were saying. But we worked together on legal issues too. And in fact, as of the 1st of January 2017, no towns or villages in France can use pesticides in public areas. And Article 2 will come into force in 2019, and that is a ban on the sale of pesticides for private persons. So glyphosate and other products can no longer be used in gardens. And I would like to greet all the villagers, the pioneers that are going to take the floor later on, by the way, and call upon them to call upon the European institutions to give their support, to get them to mobilise and help citizens. I didn't know that the mayor of Mals had actually been taken to court. And there's one thing I'd like to say. As soon as I can, I will go down there. I'll get in touch with the mayor in order to show that this is not normal, that he has to do what his citizens want him to do. So I will be starting my new term in Parliament. I've got another 6 years to go. And before the end of that term, I hope that all the countries that are represented here today, European countries and other countries, will take measures that are actually quite straightforward to implement. People in France are actually very happy now that they can show that they are no longer using pesticides. So thank you very much indeed for passing me the floor once again.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much to MP Labbé, and thank you to the other speakers.
The town of Mals, we've already talked about it, so I would like to call Josef Gruber to the stage. Especially when Joanna Drake said that the topic of the next Green Week, which is like, as you may know, it's like the biggest week where about environmental EU policies in Europe. It was just 2 weeks ago. So that if the next one will be about environmental legislation, I thought exactly about Mals. But it's also interesting, you know, because you have mayors who engage for the health and the environment and eventually the quality of life for the citizens. And they can get sued. And on the other hand, there are cities who get sued because they do not do enough action, you know, like on I don't know, air quality in the cities. So there is this interesting situation. But I think it's a really good topic. Apart from that, then Josef Gruber is here. I would like first to start with a small video message. It's from the mayor of Mals, before we then have a short presentation from Josef Gruber. So also the video is in German, so please, for the ones who you do not speak, well, this time the language of Angela Merkel and Goethe, put on your headphones. So the mayor is called Uli Ulrich Veit from Mals. The audio. Is there any support for the IT support for the audio of the video? Okay, now we heard the birds.
Yes, my name is Uli Veit. I'm the mayor of the town of Mals in South Tyrol. I'd like to thank you very much indeed for inviting me to your meeting, but unfortunately I have to send a video message today because I had committed to go elsewhere today some time ago already. I'm very pleased to see that people all over Europe are thinking about what a municipality or a small area can do in order to protect nature and public health and diversity. And I'd like to ask you to support us in Mals on our journey. Years and years ago, we set out on this journey in order to become a pesticide-free town. We held a referendum, and people here, the vast majority of people, stated that they wanted to live in a town without pesticides. Now, we've had to overcome a lot of hurdles and remove a lot of obstacles on our journey in order to implement this pesticide ban. And that's very important for us because of public health, but also because we feel that if people want something, then we in the local authority have to implement this. And that's why we also need the support of the European Union, so that these powers are not just granted to member states, or in our case Rome, but actually to local authorities away from capitals, because we can't always trust the national state, and in our case the government in Rome, to implement this ban and to help us to protect public health to support biodiversity in agriculture and to support diversity. So thank you very much indeed once again. Have fun, enjoy it. I hope you get some interesting contributions to your meeting, and hopefully I'll be able to be there in person next time round. Goodbye.
Mr. Veit, and the people from Mals, please send the regards from Brussels, and Mals has our support. And I would like to pass on to one of the citizens of Mals, Josef Gruber. Josef Gruber ist von der Initiative für mehr Demokratie und war seit langer Zeit involviert in diesem ganzen Prozess mit Mals zum Thema, dem sogenannten Malzer Weg, zum Thema pestizidfreie Gemeinde Mals. So, Josef Gruber, Sie haben das Wort.
Dankeschön.
Thank you very much.
Un saluto particolare agli amici.
Because there are two different microphones at the same time, so you should try this one.
Yeah. Go. Allora, saluto particolarmente gli amici.
So I would like to say hello to all of our Italian friends. But I'm going to be speaking German. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Ich werde jetzt auf.
And as I said, I will continue in German. Now I'm going to report on the experience that we've had. I am part of the local authority in the small town of Mals in the Alps between Italy, Austria and Germany, and I am basically in charge of agriculture. Now, the fact that this small town has been receiving such international attention is not because of our town itself, but it has to do with the fact that the use of pesticides has caused a lot of concern in many places, not just in Mals, but elsewhere too. In some places, it's really become a public nuisance. And what we've done in Mals is what I will now explain. It's going to be at two levels. On the one hand, I'm going to look at the problem of pesticides, and on the other hand, I'm going to look at the political problems. Just a big step back. 25 years ago, at the Ecological Institute in the South Tyrol, we're looking at a new approach to find out what levers we need to use in order to become more successful in future. And we've organized seminars on the issue, what is in the way of an ecological revolution? At the end of these seminars, we came to the conclusion that we would be less successful if we can't change the political framework. Environmental problems, as we know, have been around for decades in Western countries, and they've been a problem and a challenge for a long time. However, they're not dealt with properly at a political level. Political decisions are way behind what's actually happening in practice and way behind scientific knowledge. Politics often react too late or not at all. I think of glyphosate and other areas. So we don't really know why this is the case. Democracy, the way we know it and practice it, suffers from systemic failure. And in order to do something about these shortcomings, we need tools, direct democratic tools, in order to bring about change. First of all, in the case of chronic delays, insufficient measures, or nothing being done at all, we as citizens have to be able to start a political process which should be straightforward and effective in order to come up with necessary decisions. So that means referendums, binding referendums. Secondly, At the same time, we should be able to take difficult political decisions and to discuss those at grassroots level, to think about them, and then maybe to confirm them or not. So basically, again, a referendum on the initiative of citizens. And I looked at two tools, two instruments that could be useful here, minimum standards. The easiest thing to do is to extend democratic practices at a local level, but it shouldn't be limited to the local level. In our experience, it's clear that citizens' rights have to be fought for at all levels because we have to deal with resistance from politicians, the economy, and other sectors. Moving on to Mars then. In 2012, on the request of the mayor, Ulrich White, we decided to change the laws in our village, and we wanted to involve our citizens in decision-making, which means that as a citizen, I could be part of decision-making processes, participation, which was decided in 2013. And there were several instruments for this, and we decided to be able to use citizens' initiatives, so referendums and binding referendums. So on the one hand, we could accelerate things, and on the other hand, we could put on the brakes by using these two types of referendums. In the meantime, we came up against a new situation. In fact, intensive agriculture was increasing and taking the place of more traditional agriculture. So we have traditional agriculture on the one hand and organic agriculture clashing with other types of agriculture. In the case of spraying and irrigation, for example, the pesticides end up in the villages. And if there are cows in the area, or if you're cutting hay in the area, then obviously you don't want these pesticides nearby. And the exposure is quite clear, and it was confirmed by laboratories. And this actually damages agriculture. And this damage is borne largely by organic farms. It's impossible to rotate, or very difficult to rotate crops. We required distances from spraying 5 to 10 meters. We had to carry out analysis of residues, and of course there are health risks as well for people and animals that are close to the areas being sprayed. And the increased concern for health amongst the locals have to do with playgrounds, gardens, open roads, public roads on which children and other tourists as well move around, and without being aware of the risks as a result of spraying. Intensively used pesticides, fungicides, and other chemicals pose a clear threat. We've got the old, well-known products and new products as well, and no one knows exactly who takes decisions about this, but many do suspect that there are risks. So it's time for politicians to act. The conflict was on the rise from year to year, and the town council was becoming more and more aware of what was happening, but wasn't actually doing anything. And even the mayor, or White, who is in charge of public health in his town, has admitted that in this area he is supposed to be able to act, but he doesn't know how. He can't see how to act, because he would not survive any measures taken politically. And given that politicians cannot act, we then got to this critical point at which politicians have to leave the decision up to the citizens, if possible. And that meant that the preparatory work that we carried out could now be put into practice quicker than expected.
Yes, okay. Wie durch die Gemeindesatzung und die entsprechende Verordnung vorgesehen.
So, as per the rules, a committee was set up by some local people. They dealt with the issue and they applied for a referendum at the town council. So everyone above 16 could vote on whether there should be a ban on any use of chemicals in the future in March. And then we looked at the we managed to get the correct number of signatories, and then a date was set. There was a public discussion on this issue, not only in March. The issue was then picked up on by many other local authorities in our region, and so it was no longer a taboo. Before the referendum, there were many attempts to undermine it, and also to undermine the mayor. And these attacks sometimes came from outside of the local area, from elsewhere in the region. They pulled out all the stops to try and prevent the referendum taking place. They were unsuccessful. Everyone who was applicable, who could vote, received information in 2014, and they had 10 days then to go and register their vote. 69.2% was the turnout for the referendum. By way of comparison, the local elections were only 67%. What was the result of the referendum? 75.8% of participants voted for a pesticide-free community. So, according to the statutes, this referendum is binding. What's the current state of affairs? The chemicals lobby and some local politicians working for the lobbies have, at a political level, so from the democratic level, moved to the legal channels, because the democratic process has actually come up with a clear result. So they're paying an awful lot for lawyers to try and undermine the result of the referendum, which was, of course, voted on by the local population. And this, of course, could have consequences for the mayor. And this has all been financed by interest representatives from outside of the local area. So there is still pesticides being used, and there is still damage being wrought as before. So we are very concerned as to what is going on, but we're also very determined to make sure that things move legally in the right direction, because we're dealing with democracy here. That democracy and health are what's at stake here. And it doesn't only concern our local area. Just some brief conclusions. First of all, referenda. Independent from their result, they are always a success because it leads to discussion of the issues at hand. Irregardless of whether Miles actually attains its objective or not, we have actually brought about, we've put the wheels in motion. Without direct democracy, this would not have happened, and Miles wouldn't be on the map at all. Secondly, referenda at all political levels should be seen as a possibility. Simple rules that are citizen-friendly and effective. And the limitations and the formal requests, they should only be limited to the minimum. Thirdly, our health and our democracy should in no circumstances just be sold to the highest bidder. Health and a political role in the public discussion are of paramount importance. And last but not least, that's what it's all about. Thank you very much.
Herzlichen Dank, Josef Gruber und weitere.
Thank you very much, Josef Gruber. Thank you very much for talking to us about what's happening in Miles.
Good example also for next year's Green Week if we talk about environmental legislation, because what seems sensible, you know, you discuss in a town, in a city about health, environment, the citizens express their vote, the mayor follows what the large majority of the citizens wants, but then you see there are all this legal trouble, so I think it's a good case for this discussion and what citizens can and should really engage with. I now pass on to the European Green Capitals, the Oscars for green cities, and I'm happy to give the stage to Don Verhoeven from the city of Nijmegen in the Netherlands to tell us a bit what's going on in terms of citizen-driven, nature-based resilience in cities in the city of Nijmegen. Don, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, good morning everybody. My name is Ton Verhoeven. I'm working for the municipality of Nijmegen, as told, as an advisor on water, sustainability and green. Mrs. Drake was here, but was also 1.5 years ago in Ljubljana, where we got the prize as a European Green Capital and were awarded for 3 years work. And as you can read, one of the big things of green capitals, I think, is citizens' participation in all green capitals. Is that one big thing, and citizen participations are connected to green cities, I think. This is also green, but there are some green buildings in Nijmegen during the opening session in January this year. And this is Nijmegen. Nijmegen is a mid-sized city at the east of Holland, near the border. The 10th city, and it's a very compact city, as you can see. Nature is around us. And everybody who says Nijmegen is a green city is true, but it's not ours. In the north is the only place where there's a little bit less built up, but as our new developments are coming up and the greenhouses are already gone. So we have a very compact city, a young city, a university city with a very progressive left-wing political system already for years. And if you look to the east side of the city or the south side, you see this. You see a lot of nature, and passing this bridge means that in 5 minutes from city town you are in the nature area, the Ooypolder and the floodplain and a polder area. And if you are there and you look back, you see this. But how do we create a sustainable, healthy and social inclusive, because that goes together in our vision, green city that is together and for citizens. Already for years we have a lot of green campaigns, as you can see here. First, we had a campaign in the city center to get more green in our city center, because in the shopping streets it's difficult to get more green. And now we are at the bottom line campaigns, and I'll show you a lot of pictures and not telling you a lot of stories. This is the corn market on the left in 2008-9, and thanks to European funding in the European project Future Cities, we turned this over in a pocket park, and we do that always, such kind of green projects, in participation projects with the citizens, and they have the highest level of participation, decision right, with indicators of budget and time and measures, of course. But often we use water elements in it, because if you see water, you can tell about the rainwater system and how you can deal in a sustainable way with rainwater in combination with green. But it was a difficult project, because underneath our surface in the city center is 2000 years of history, because we are an old Roman city. And digging up anything means a lot of money. So such pocket park costs 600,000 euros, and half of it is only archaeology and all the other things. In the Green Allure City campaign, it was from mobile green up to the difficult green, and the pocket park is of course the difficult green, but on the left you see some mobile green, but you can also easily make your walls greener, or on the right side a difficult green wall, also paid by European funding, unless we wouldn't have done it, because such a green wall cost 100,000 euros in Holland at least. And it's very, very difficult to maintain that and to hold that. This is the easy way. When citizens' houses are nearby the public space, they are always allowed to pick up some stones out of the pavement, of our pavement, and put in plants and make their streets a little bit more beautiful. And you see that in a lot of city centers in Holland. It's very easy to do such things. In the campaign Green Connects, it started 4 years ago, and we will go on. The new coalition is just installed, the political coalition, and we have money for that. On the left you see another pocket park, where used to be a swimming pool, and our project developers wanted to build their houses, but the citizens were against it. They asked for a pocket park. It's a little bigger than a pocket park, and they've got it. But other projects are much smaller, as you see at the right side. It's just, we wanted to have more green, and together with the citizens, the only thing that turned over in green was this little spot, and the rest of the pavement was kept as pavement, because they wanted that children could play there easily. And that is also citizens' participation. Sometimes we want more and citizens don't want more. Two kinds of streets. On the left side, a street in a low social area where part of the pavement is removed and roses are planted. It's the maintenance we do. On the right side, citizens ask for more green in their street, and they sign the contract and they maintain the green. Because it's easily seen that it is a difficult kind of green, more flowers and more maintenance is needed on the right side. And they maintain it. And if they don't maintain, then the contract stops and maybe we turn it over into pavement again. Because we have a very low basic green maintenance in the city due to expensive budgets for green maintenance, and we don't have that money. Although we are a green capital, it doesn't mean that we are a rich city and rich in green. Because we are a very nice city, all the students stay. And when a lot of people are unemployed, then you know why you are not a rich city. This is another campaign. This campaign, as I translated, Breaking the Stones. In Dutch it's called Operatie Steenbreek, and the Dutch word steenbreek is saxifrage, is a little plant that grows into rocks or tiles. And this is tree planting day. Normally we have tree planting day, plant 2 or 3 or 4 trees only in the neighborhood of one primary school with one class. And this year 32 out of 42 primary schools were involved, 2,000 pupils, more than 4,000 fruit trees, fruit shrubs and hedges were planted, and more than 13,000 tiles were removed. And we posed a target for this year of 100,000 tiles, and that means 1 hectare of pavement. That's not really much, but removing that in public space or in private space, that is quite a job. All the vice mayors were involved, and the mayor in planting the trees and all the other things. And this campaign was started, and we got a lot of attention of the press and the local television, and a lot of people now know that we are doing this. And it's much more, such a start is much more, is much better for knowing that citizens want to participate in green projects as the Green Connects campaign. What about ecology? We have a lot of ecological maintained grass fields, but the closer you come to the city center, the more it are only lawns without flowers, without much insects. And we took 2 people, we hired them, and they have the small company NL Bloeit, translated as Holland Flowers, and connected to a lot of other institutions and NGOs and people. And they are starting doing all kind of projects. On the left you see a butterfly garden in a bigger park, where all our big events, rock concerts and things like that are organized. So it is not always easy to get them more ecological fields. But there was a beehive center nearby and there were no flowers. So on the right side you see one of the tracks that were sowed with flowers, because 2 years ago the famous 4 days marches, where 1.5 million visitors come to Nijmegen to see and enjoy the parties, but 60,000 people are walking for 30, 40 or 50 kilometers a day, and a lot of those roads were sowed with flowers. This is a street on the campus of the university. On the left it was last year, and on the right it is this year, because also the university and the university hospital are very much involved in the Green Capital Year, and they wanted also to show something about their green environment. Another picture on the left in the same Goffert Park, where we had now 10-12 patches where lawn was changed over into flower beds. And on the right, children are building insect hotels. And but also the students are doing something. And I must say these are not the normal students, but the right-wing students. But they celebrate their 90-year jubilee, and they ask for money to all their alumni, and they will plant a new forest somewhere at the borders of Nijmegen. But here they are standing for their jubilee tree that was planted in March. On the right side you see the start of a campaign of removing exotic invasive plants. We will monitor this coming Saturday. We will go on bike, city round, and try to find out all the spots where those exotic plants grow, and some weekends later we will try to remove them. And that was my last picture, and I hope to see you all in Nijmegen in a couple of weeks, where we have the Green Capital Award ceremony. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Very inspiring what you are doing in Nijmegen. I liked also this example, about the citizens. It's not just about the municipality giving the green, but it's also about the citizens taking care of the green. I know also in Brussels, for instance, they have initiatives where you can ask the municipality to put a hole for the plant, you know, for the facade. Then I visited, I visited this friend and I said, well, but your plant is already dead. And he said, well, we are in Brussels, it's always bad weather and raining. So I think this is a really a good example that in many cities, if citizens then also get green, then it's also about taking care. And I also wanted to mention with Nijmegen from ICLEI side, we gladly work together, and especially from the 3rd to the 5th October in Nijmegen, we will organize a conference which is probably the largest on sustainable public purchasing, on sustainable public procurement. It's from the 3rd to the 5th October in Nijmegen. Thank you. I now pass on from the European Green Capital of this year, 2018, to the European Green Capital of next year, which is Oslo in Norway, and I give the word straight away to Terje Laskemoen. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So, and thank you for inviting us to speak here today. I'm going to focus on 2 topics today. Nature-based solutions, and in that sense, reopening of waterways, and also a bit more broad overview of biodiversity. So, and by the way, I'm head of the Department for Nature and Pollution in the Agency for Urban Environment in City of Oslo. The geographical location of Oslo gives us some pretty crucial factors for why a city so far north as Oslo can have a really high biodiversity. On the right side here now, you can see the borders around the city. In the south, we have the fjord with islands, and it's quite a warm climate. We have a built-up zone in the center there, and we have vast forests both north and east of the city. This gives us a pretty spectacular biodiversity, actually. But another factor in Oslo is that since we have all the forests surrounding us, hilly areas, not really mountainous close to us, but it's hilly, and we have a lot of water up there running through the city. We have 8 main waterways running through the city, and also 2 border waterways with other municipalities. But during the early start of the 20th century, the city started to grow. Many of these waterways, they took up space, and they were also used as open sewers, so they were closed. And the biggest ones, they were more or less kept because they were important for factories and industry, of course. But the smaller ones, it was really easy to just dig them down, bring a pipe or culvert down there, and landfill on top and build buildings. But with climate changing and also the precipitation, not only more rain, but especially more heavy rain. So much, in the last 20 years, we have seen a quite dramatic change in precipitation in Oslo also. I guess you're all familiar with what happened in Copenhagen and Malmö in 2011. We haven't really had that big episodes in Oslo yet, but the only thing we can know for sure is that it will come. So we'll have to prepare for stormwater and how to handle this. And reopening waterways is probably the best you can do. Of course, also make the city more resilient and lead water down to these waterways in a good way. I'm gonna focus on one area now because this is pretty close to where we actually have our office building. And it's the water. It's a stream actually called Hovindbekken. It used to be the most closed stream or waterway in Oslo, but during the last 10 years, it has become the most reopened waterway. It was probably one of the most polluted waterways, open sewer and big problems with leakages up until early 2000 actually. But now it's gone through a dramatic change through development in the area, And in this work, citizens' involvement has been really important. We have a big NGO in Oslo called Oslo River Forum. They have, for every of the main waterways, they have a river group, and we're collaborating quite closely with them. And they also actually adapt or make school children adopt stretches of rivers or streams throughout the city. So they kind of they adopt a stretch and they help clean it. They tell us immediately if they see something. It could be pollution, dead fish, or people cutting down trees, which is illegal, of course. So that's a really big help for us. But these projects are pretty costly. They're really expensive, actually. So the way we've done it in Oslo is that the first big projects the city has been project leaders and also paying for. But now, as the private developers has seen what this really brings to the city, they have realized that, okay, maybe if we join in, we can make agreements with the government. We can pay for maybe half, maybe more than that. They can get private houses that will be more attractive for people. So that's the way the development is going now, and that accelerates the phase for reopening waterways. So in this area we have an area called Teglverksdammen, or it used to be an old brick factory here. We have the national tennis arena in the center, white there. That's not part of it, but we reopened the river or the stream around it, and we made several sedimentation basins. We planted in dense vegetation to pick up nutrients. And we, of course, we have provided the area for citizens and with pathways, with places you can actually, we have grills, common grills. You can come there, bring your food and grill. And it also attracts biodiversity. So, and a really important factor there is that when we're making this sort of, it's not a real stream, because it's really on top of the surface. If we were going down to where the stream originally, historically was, we would have to dig down 8-10 meters. And then we would kind of have a ditch in the area. So we actually have kept the tunnel or culvert underneath as a stormwater safety precautions. And the stream is really planned for taking quite some flood it can handle. But if it's really critical, then we'll lead much of the flood water down to the culvert again. But anyway, the plants we have introduced here, it's important to not introduce invasive species. So we have only native species occurring in the Oslo area. We have taken measures to provide habitat for fish, for bottom dwellers, insects, and of course the birds, water birds, they will naturally be attracted to the area. So this little collage shows some of the work. On the top left there you can see how the substrate is, it's stones, it's fish hides, and it's of course some of the smaller waterfalls, they don't really look natural, but we don't have much space here, so we're working in a densely urban area. But where there is space, we have kind of widened out, made sure we have plants both in the stream, also on the sides. And on the two images on the left bottom there, you can see where we're actually or taking out vegetation from an amphibian dam that was about to grow, or about to lose it actually. It was too heavily planted. And we brought plants down to this new area where we're reopening the stream. And this is just a few hundred meters apart, so this close native species from the area. On the bottom right, you can see how we handle stormwater. We try to infiltrate to maintain the water on the surfaces. This is from a school area, but if it's really huge amounts, then it's led safely down into this stream system. And the left picture here is from this was finished in August, September 2015. This is from the spring 2016. It's not much plants yet, but if you come visit Oslo, for example, next year, when we're European Green Capital, you can see a quite different image. It's densely vegetated. It's a lot more biodiversity that's already come there, and it actually works because this is a natural cleaning system, as the title says. So we have sedimentation ponds where we can take out sediments, and we're planning to do that maybe this year already. We have running water where you can get oxygen mixed into the water, and we also have big surfaces where sunlight can hit the surface, and UV light kills bacteria if there is problems with that. And this huge lake we can see on the right is more or less a large-scale sedimentation dam. And already from the start, we started measuring water quality, so we were quite keen to see how this worked. So throughout the first year, already in spring 2016, we could see that water quality improved through 600 meters of this cleaning system. And we didn't really expect that, because we thought we will need some 3 to 4 or 5 years before this system is up and going. But surprisingly, it was working already at the start. So that was nature-based, and of course our main NGO, Oslo River Forum, they were really happy with this. So we have, together with them, we can invite people, show them this, tell them about how we work together, and so on. And it's become a really popular area to bring groups. So at times I've been guiding there 2-3 times a week, but I don't always have time for that. But we'll probably put up a program for 2019, or definitely put up a program for that. But biodiversity on a bigger scale in Oslo. As I said, we have the fjord in the south, we have these islands, we have a warm climate, even though we had lots of snow this winter. The snow disappeared quite early, so the last 3 weeks has been really, really warm, up to 30 degrees in Oslo. And actually now it's getting really dry. And then we have the built-up zone in the center there, and you can see the forest areas, especially the northern ones in the horizon there. This, together with the long historical, what should I say, cultural area of Oslo. We had settlements there for thousands of years. It was an important city during the Viking Age, and it's been from early on, a big city with impacts from human settlements. So we have a lot of hay fields, which are maybe not natural, but they have become through this long historical period. We have lots of big trees on the top left there. We have dams for amphibians. We have, for instance, one species, the great crested newt. The biggest populations are in Oslo, so we have a special responsibility for taking care of that species. And on the down right there, you can see volunteers, citizens working with the eradication of invasive species, because that's become a big problem in the last years. This shows a newly established flowery meadow close to the University of Oslo, where we collaborate with the University of Oslo to maintain this clover, lots of species of plants. There's a butterfly on the right there. It's important for insects. And people tend to kind of misunderstand how these flowery meadows should be kept. It's important that they are cut, and it's important to take away the green, because that's what they historically did. This was food for horses, sheep, and so on. People think that we should cut it and leave it there, but then you'll. So this is really important. And the city of Oslo, we don't have enough money or enough people or enough funding to take care of all of this. So we're kind of dependent on having a good collaboration with NGOs and also volunteers, citizens all over. And we have, luckily. So this shows where we have newly established a small flowery meadow close to the old fortress in Akershus Festning. And it's supposed to mimic the plant species that we have on the small islands. They're really rare species. Some of them are heavily threatened. So kind of putting them in small spots where they can thrive. They can kind of expand their area to help protect them. This is from eradication of invasive species, the giant hogweed on the left there. That was, and I'm pointing out, it was a big problem in Oslo for 20 years ago. Now we're...
But this is not wine, isn't it?
Sorry?
This is not wine, isn't it?
No, that's not wine. And this is kind of linked to the use of pesticides and chemicals. In Oslo, we do not do that. We use mechanical eradication, and in only a very few cases we can use chemicals, but the rule is no chemicals at all. For private houses, it's not that strictly regulated, unfortunately. We also, I at least, could hope we had that kind of regulation. But we're depending on having lots of collaboration with citizens, volunteers. And that has helped. So the giant hogweed has become a smaller problem now. But there are always new invasive species occurring, and as the climate changes, we have longer summers, shorter winters. We're not finished with that problem. Definitely not. This is just some example species. The northern dragonhead on the left there is it's quite common in Oslo, but elsewhere in Norway it's really, really rare. It's a special responsibility for us to take care of. And the clover plant on the right there is the only natural occurring population is actually on one of the islands in Oslo. And it's also the county plant of mountain clover is the English name. And I think I'll just stop with this image, which shows an NGO. They are linked to one of the lakes in the city, Østensjøvannet, Østensjøvannets venner, or Østensjøvannets friends in English. They are one of our most important NGOs in maintaining this, at least this area around this lake. So here they're maintaining a hayfield. You can see they're chopping down, they're removing, and they're also doing mechanical removing of invasive plants. They are there's a nature reserve around the lake. They are our eyes out there all the time. So if something happens, we will know immediately because these guys, they are out all the time. So that, I think I'll end with that slide.
Thank you so much. Terje Baskone. I've never been to Oslo, but it looks much greener and biodiverse than I thought of. So definitely it was a good possibility. So first we will go to Nijmegen and then to Oslo. Thank you. I'm aware we are a bit late. We have a generous coffee break planned, but if you don't mind, because I'm really sorry, but you know how it is to, if you hear that 30 are still in the queue at the security, you cannot really start on time. So please, thank you for your understanding. We will try now to have Beauchevin here from Belgium. We'll give a short presentation and then just a few words from Professor Ackermann here on the exhibition and a few reflective thoughts, and then we will have the coffee break in the atelier. So thanks for your understanding. Thank you. Oui, je vous donne la parole.
So I'll give you the floor now. We're switching to French.
Oui, bonjour.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yes, given that we haven't got too much time, I'll try to be brief. So my name is Vincent Bulto. I'm an environmental advisor at the municipality of Beauvais-Champ, and I'm going to give you an overview of what we've done in the past 25 years in order to protect nature through participative long-term planning. So Beauvais-Champ is a small municipality here in Belgium. It's about 40 minutes outside of Brussels. We've got about 4,000 hectares of surface area, just over 7,000 inhabitants. 72% of the area is agricultural land. There's a military base in the south of about 450 hectares, and covers slightly overlapping with other municipalities. We've got 23 full-time equivalent white-collar workers and 18 full-time equivalent blue-collar workers. Now, as you can see here, that we've got a lot of agricultural area, and the natural areas are located around the villages, in the valleys, and in the bottom of the valleys we've got some wooded areas too, as you can see here on the right at the end of the open field agricultural areas. Now, since 1995, we created a natural development plan, and the first charter of this plan was signed with our citizens in 2000, and we were recognised by a Walloon consortium of environmental organisations as being the most active municipality in the area of biodiversity. In 2010, we signed our second PCDN charter, which covered 40 projects as compared to 36 in the previous charter. And since 2011, then, we've seen that we're reducing our use of pesticides, and we actually got to 0 pesticides in 2014. And we have just signed our third PCDN charter. Now, I'm going to... before the project, just the way in which we work, because that's quite interesting to see. There are a lot of planning tools that we work with in Beauchamp. These evolve around Agenda 21 local, so that's the municipal programme for rural development. And all these tools and programmes are grassroots initiatives, citizen initiatives. So all the parts that have to do with the ecological aspects and the environment, the PCDN, that is the municipal nature plan, is part of this Agenda 21 project. So we have all these planning tools that evolve around this structure, and that means that we can avoid any clashes between the tools. Within each tool, we take account of the other tools. We look at social cohesion, public work services, but also everything that has to do with mobility. So we've got this programme at the centre, and in this way we set up actions on the spot and projects, and I'll focus on some of the environmental issues and what we've done. First of all, we found that the rivers in the area were highly polluted. Millions of euros were invested in cleaning up the rivers, water treatment plants, etc. And now we can actually, we've restocked our rivers, and we're waiting for fish to come back. There are still some obstacles in the waterways, but things have improved enormously. There are, in actual fact, already quite a few fish in our waterways now. Then there was a citizens' initiative for some of the playgrounds to be made more educational. Here you can see a playground with what we call an educational pond. It's fenced off, and you can see the playgrounds in the background. And there's a little bridge there, and children can come and see what's happening there under the supervision of teachers. And then we try to involve young people in what we do around the village, and here you can see several young people taking part in our fight against invasive species, invasive plants. They're actually pulling out invasive plants here. And we've got actions that we do together with the municipality, local organisations and landowners, again fighting invasive species or protecting threatened species. And this is done together with the farmers. The farmer here is on the left. So various parties are involved in this. And as you'd have seen, Bourg-Chat is largely an agricultural area, and as soon as we see a bit of green, we'd like to preserve it. And the so-called sunken roads or rural roads are particularly important here. We try to manage them in such a way that we make sure that agricultural vehicles can use the roads, but at the same time we protect the green corridors here. Then with climate change, we're also affected by storms, in particular heavy rainfall. And so we've built what we call a natural stormwater basin, in which we try to preserve biodiversity as much as possible. These areas are flooded, but as I say, this is aimed at preserving biodiversity here in this area, which is very important for the municipality. And we've even worked, for example, here at the cemetery, where we've created an underground area. It's a cemetery that had an underground corridor linking to the chapel on the other side of the road, and you can see here that there's a symbol of a bat on the door, and in fact bats can go in and spend the winter there. They've been doing it for several years now, and we had quite a few bats who actually hibernated in that area underground. And as I said, we plan everything on the basis of the tools that we have, and when we renovate or rebuild public buildings, we always try to bear in mind the environment at the same time, because it's cheaper that way. So what we've done here, we've built these little kind of entrances or nests for bats in some areas, and here we have nesting areas for birds. And we also organise a lot of events, awareness-raising events. This has to do with the raising of birds. It's one of 3 centres that's open to the public in Belgium. It's been around since 2001, and we explain everything that has to do with ecology. And there's about 5,000 people that have come to see the birds in this centre. And on request of citizens who are involved in beekeeping, we've carried out a number of beekeeping events. There's a beekeeping centre involving different people, and the aim is to produce sustainable honey, so using local species that make sure that there is room for all kinds of insects. And then we've got the natural cemeteries. Given that pesticides can no longer be used, we've simply let everything grow, particularly flowers. And this is a great success, although not everybody's equally happy with this, but I'll get back to that later on. And then we're looking for alternative methods to pesticides. Basically, that means that weeding is done largely by hand. And something else we've done. This was a concrete playground. You can't actually tell, but because the ground is agricultural ground in the area, it's a very rich soil. In many areas, and we've used this playground at the school. We've covered it with a thin layer of soil, and we look after it so that flowers and plants can grow there. And I can see it from my office, it looks lovely. So, as I said, we have this municipal nature development plan. There are 92 municipalities in the Walloon area that work on the basis of these kinds of this kind of program, and This was started by the region, and at a local level it's managed by the town council, the municipality, together with citizens. So everything is done together with the citizens. And the aim is to get everybody around the table, anyone who's involved, so environmentalists, hunters, fishermen, citizens who want to talk about the environment and nature. Everybody comes around the table and talks about the way in which we can develop the local policy in order to look after the environment and nature as best as we can, and in order to improve our living conditions. Now, we've been part of this plan, this PCDN, since 1995. It's actually been around since 1993 in the Walloon region, and that's why we've already drafted 3 charters for the PCDN so far. I mean, every time we draft the charter, we get together with the different parties to see how to go about things. So what's at the centre of this is citizens' participation. And I'd like to give you 2 brief examples of things that we have to deal with. At the bottom on the left here, you can see a green area. Small green area. And when things start to grow here, you get flowers. Those are 2 stages in which citizens are not really involved, but the time needed for plants to grow and for flowers to grow, that's something where citizens are more concerned. We got a lot of comments on social media about the fact that we weren't actually doing anything about that stage. And when the flowers start to die, again, you need this process for the soil to get its nutrients, etc. And again, we weren't really doing enough according to our citizens. And they were saying that we were actually reducing the areas with plants and flowers. And in fact, we realized that citizens' awareness was inversely proportionate to the state of the living conditions. The worse the living conditions, the more citizens became involved in the work, whereas now we're seeing the opposite happening because we've been working on this PCDN plan for some 20 years now. And we're finding that it's becoming harder to encourage people to actually take part in this work and to come and listen to us. So this is citizens' participation last year. We organised these roundtable discussions of 10 to 12 people at a time to make sure that everyone can be heard. We've got the logo here on the right, the Rural Foundation of Wallonia. And obviously I couldn't organise such roundtable discussions on my own, so we worked together with this foundation because we want to make sure that everybody can be involved and everybody can express their opinion. So together with the support of the FRW here, we've been working on this, and without them, to be honest, I wouldn't have been able to organise all of this. So we organised 2 events. We got 197 ideas that were put forward that were summarised in 3 files, one with a project, one with projects that we've been working on for the past 20 years, and a 3rd file with a request from citizens as regards waste management, something that we hadn't worked on yet. And these 3 files were then broken down into 51 topics, 51 themes, which we're going to work on in our municipality in the coming 5 to 10 years. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Vincent, from Beaubichat. It's good to know that there are villages and small towns around Brussels that do such things, so thank you very much for that. I think I've actually been there. I think I've spent a day there, but I certainly intend to go there again.
And we now pass on just to a few reflections from a very interesting person, Philip Ackerman. Here you are. I was looking for you. interesting person because you run your own farm and you are at the same time a professor at the Green Mountain College. Usually being a professor and running a farm is conflicting. In your case, that seems to work. So thanks a lot. So if you could just say a few thoughts, reflection, what you heard so far, and maybe a few words about this exhibition that you also brought, that you also wrote this book that Joanna Drake wrote. So what's so special about these malts and that you came all the way from the ocean? Thank you very much.
Great.
For keeping it also short because it's now between you and the coffee break. But
right.
What a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Peter. And I lived in Europe long enough to know that an American should not be between himself, or he shouldn't put himself between Europeans and coffee. So I'll be rather brief here. But thank you so much for welcoming me here. I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you a little bit, and especially to share the exhibit that you'll see outside during the coffee break. And, you know, I just would like to say that for an American, whether you realize it or not, but we really look to Europe for a common sense path to a sustainable future. It's very important. The models you set are actually the models that I think we find very often 5 or 10 years later. So what you're doing is important not only here for the EU and for communities like Maltz, but also you're a beacon for places like the United States. So thank you so much for that. You may wonder why there's an American who is so intrigued by this story of Maltz, and it's because in 1983 I first went to the South Tyrol as a student to study the agricultural traditions that are there in the Alps, particularly in Südtirol, and just fell in love with that whole place. So that was 35 years ago. And then just kept finding myself going back again and again, and then from 1990 until 1983 was actually working there in the South Tyrol, interestingly enough, working in a vineyard and orchard and spraying pesticides. And after 3 years of being in a respirator and rubber suit, I decided that there had to be another way to do agriculture. And at that point went back to the United States and decided that I would search for models that frankly I couldn't find in the South Tyrol very frequently of successful organic farming operations. I wasn't finding it in the United States. And so I spent the last 25 years searching for that, and then also doing that on my own farm, and then also establishing a 10-hectare organic farm at Green Mountain College in Vermont. So, but when I was living in the South Tyrol from 1990 to 1993 and spraying pesticides during the summers, you know, the place that I always went to, actually, ironically enough, to escape was to go to Maltz, to the Upper Finchgau, because it was a place where there was still the traditional agriculture, the diversified agriculture. There weren't people spraying pesticides. You could actually be a tourist there and really appreciate all of the food, the landscape, and feel like you were in a secure, safe environment. And so it was always a place that was very beloved to me. And then in 2014, I try every other year to bring graduate students to the South Tyrol to study, do a study tour for a course that we call Turning Traditions into Markets, looking at how the people of Maltz have utilized the wisdom and the ways of the past in many ways to build new market opportunities, new sustainable market opportunities. And in doing that, in 2014, 3 days before the tour, a friend told me, well, Maltz is having this referendum, and this referendum is to be pushing for a pesticide-free future. And I knew well, as Josef said, that pesticides were a taboo subject. They were something that you didn't bring up, you didn't talk about, and certainly not in a negative context. So I was so astounded that I quickly changed the tour schedule, and we went to Maltz with the graduate students during the first week of the referendum in order to see what was happening there. And from that point on, I was really smitten. I was taken by this whole story that was so powerful of a group of people who came together in a small town really to take on the forces of a Goliath. And that's really what the story is. So it was a story that I decided at that point, I was intimidated by it, but I decided that I wanted to tell it, and that it was a story not just of pesticides, but also of direct democracy, a story of the precautionary principle, which we don't understand in the United States very well, and you understand much better. It's also a story of sustainable development. Or, put another way, as you've been talking about it here, it's about nature-based towns and cities, about citizen-powered initiatives, about resilience planning. All of those things are there in the story of Maltz in a very powerful way. And when you see and you experience the fact that local farmers, doctors, veterinarians, wildlife biologists, chefs, bakers, foresters, beekeepers, innkeepers, teachers, parents, all come together for nearly 24 meetings over a period of 2 years when they come together to chart a path forward for a healthy environment, a healthy economy, and healthy citizens. And then 3/4 of the population votes for a pesticide-free future. Then why shouldn't the political will of the people be acknowledged? So Malz really was a David and Goliath story. It still is, even today. It's one that represented everything that I believe in as a professor of sustainable agriculture, as a farmer myself, as an advocate of local food systems, and also as a parent. So I was fortunate enough to be able to invite friends of mine, Mickey Durakovils, and then also the multimedia artist Douglas Gayton from the Lexicon of Sustainability in the United States to try to help capture the story because it's so powerful. It really is, in a nutshell, it's the story of our times in so many ways. And so the collection of artworks that you're going to see as you step outside that we've created together with Douglas's magic in terms of photography and multimedia, that collection of artworks is really a mosaic of ordinary citizens who, when united in their commitment to a healthier world in the one place that they understand better than anyone else, when united in that commitment, they become stronger themselves than they'd ever imagined. And as you look at the artworks, and as others across the world have done with this traveling exhibit that we're taking throughout the world, as they look at that, I hope that you'll think about the basic human right to live in a toxic-free environment. In the case of Malz, this was a well-conceived, they worked diligently throughout, it was a well-conceived pesticide-free zone. And I think we have to remember that one person's quote-unquote crop protection can be a community's poison, for which the only lasting antidote is sound public policy rooted in science and the most basic form of democracy, the expression of public will at the local level. So thank you. I hope you enjoy the exhibit.
Thank you so much, Philip. And apologies again, there was no time really for debate in this first part. And I hope there is some in the next part if you don't have the coffee break too long, but take your time. There will be the exhibition. Philip will be there also and also the Josef Gruber from Malz, and also some others like Kuhn Hertoge to explain you a bit what the photos are about. So the coffee break is in the atelier. You just go out and then on the left side you will find it. There will be some a coffee break, and we will also have the lunch there. So if it's okay with you and you can understand a bit also with the time, then let's say that around 12, we are back here for the panel, so that we have a bit of a time to talk also with the panelists. We will also have a final keynote by Nicholas Beetz, who is the EU Urban Envoy, so a very influential man also in the whole Urban EU agenda. So thank you very much so far. Thank you to the speakers. If you have questions, take your time also to talk to them now in the coffee break or later in the networking lunch. Thank you very much. Sorry, I just heard it's not the atelier, it's the atrium. So look for the atrium for the coffee break. Thank you. So welcome back. I would also like all the panelists to take their seat already. So please, everybody, take your seat so that we can start. Good news is that, and a big thank to the interpreters, we got agreed a bit more time, so we'll try to have, if we see that it's very tight, we have a bit of breath before we then go to the networking lunch, so big thank you. And I think everybody's there. So the second session is basically a panel discussion, and I'm very glad to pass over moderation to Cecilia Delgado from Portugal. She's here as a member of the environmental organization Guercus, but I know you're also an architect and an urban planner with a long expertise on urban food systems, participatory approaches. So I think you're really the right person to be here for this panel to ask questions, also from the audience. So I pass on to you. Thank you, Cecilia. Sorry, the microphone.
Is not okay. Thank you so much, Peter, for introducing me. I'm delighted to be here. I want to thank you so much, PAN Europe and ICLEI, for inviting me. So, we are here to speak about citizen demand for healthier, greener, and resilient towns. In order to do so, we are lucky to have with us today 6 organizations. We have Ana Huertas, with the coordinator of Municipalities in Transition, an initiative led by the Transition Network. We have Hernández Coldo from from Ecologistas en Acción. They are a non-for-profit organization based in Spain. We also have with us Peter, you may already know, is the head of ICLEI office here in Brussels. We have Claudio Serafine, is the director of Organic Cities Network, a very fresh organization. Yeah. So we have also Andrzej, so sorry, is the project manager of the Healthy Cities Network in Czech Republic. And we have Marceline Boncook, she's a representative of the strategic design scenarios, and they work with citizen engagement. Including food strategies. That is a very important point. So thank you so much for accepting this invitation and for this incredible opportunity of having you with us, sharing your experience and knowledge. I will right away give the floor to Anna. You may start. Thank you.
So just an introduction and a short presentation.
Okay.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for being here. And I also want to thank ICLEI for inviting me. I'm Ana Huertas. I come from a small town near Barcelona in Spain, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. So I know we have to keep it brief. I come as a member of an organization called Transition Network. From the transition movement. So maybe some of you know the movement as transition towns. And this is a movement that has evolved throughout the last 10 years and been focusing a lot on how can we be prepared for a future that is uncertain and that will most likely be very different from what we are imagining it to be and what the movies tell us it will be like. How can we be more prepared, bearing in mind that we cannot continue to rely on fossil fuels to fuel our economies? How can we be prepared when our communities are not as strong and as cohesive as they used to be in the past? How can we change our point of view of how our system can work so that it sustains a more regenerative approach to life and to society and the economy on the whole? So one of the latest projects we are implementing throughout the movement at the moment is called Municipalities in Transition. And it stems from a very simple idea. Transition initiatives are local groups, local initiatives, trying to help the community where they live move in the direction of this transition towards being less dependent on fossil fuels, more aware of climate change, and acting locally, responding to real needs. These initiatives were telling us that one of the main barriers to their work was trying to get the municipality not just to collaborate, but at least to not put obstacles in their way. And on the other hand, more recently, municipalities were contacting us in the movement asking, we love this. This is it. We are sick of all these programs coming from national governments, from the EU, from the United Nations. We have tried everything and it doesn't work. However, we believe this can work, but we don't know how. We don't know how we can bring citizens to participate into this in a way that is more meaningful, because we cannot continue to expect that municipalities will always have the answer to everything that is happening. So the project Municipalities in Transition comes from the very simple idea of, okay, the problem is the solution. So let's bring these different actors together from civil society and from the municipalities into extraordinary spaces of dialogue, where the focus is not just put on what we can do together, what the objectives are, what we want to change, but on relationships, on how we can create relationships of trust so that we can together think about how we can respond to the challenges that we are facing locally. So this project is currently being tested in 6 pilot projects in 5 countries, in Spain, in Italy, in Brazil, in Hungary, and I can't remember the other one, sorry. And so far, I think the greatest result can be summarized in a very, very short story. So we organized a training where we invited municipal technicians and mayors to come, as well as members of civil society. And we saw the process develop as it normally does, which is politicians have their own projects and civil society have their own projects. And they both hope that this new way of thinking or this new approach will help them move their projects forward, which is legitimate, and I understand. It's fine. It's what we all want. So suddenly, to propose a way of thinking together taking off the hat of the municipality or of civil society, truly talking in dialogue, collaborating to design something different, you see all these light bulbs popping up where suddenly they go, ah, so it's not about what I think only. And as simple as it sounds, when we are talking about responding to such a complex systemic crisis as the one we are undergoing at the moment, it's amazing. And this is the kind of change that we are hoping to achieve with the project, and that I feel super excited about, and that I hope I can tell you a bit more later. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. So the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. I am Coldo Hernández from Ecologistas en Acción in Spain. First of all, I want to thank the invitation to this meeting and the opportunity to share our experiences about the campaigns against glyphosate and EDCs with colleagues from other countries. Our strategies against EDC in Spain has been mainly focused on putting pressure on local and regional administrations, as well as on the national administration. Also, at a European level, in addition, we are committed to trying to increase the citizen awareness. To citizen awareness about the impact of human health and the environment of these chemical products. In other ways, in Spain, approximately 180 cities are free glyphosates, and 3 regions, La Rioja, Aragon, and País Valenciano, are free ADCs. This is all for this moment.
Yeah. You just finished?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Peter, the floor is yours. We will have time in the discussion to ask questions, for sure.
Vasilis, I have a presentation. Thanks. Sorry, it's me again. But I really wanted to share a few more words about our project we are involved, and where, as I said, Fernando from TNO is also here, is coordinating. So it's, let me just tell you that I said about ICLEI, you know, that it's a network of cities. We are working on urban sustainability. And the project that I would like to talk about is this InnoForestD.net. InnoForestD stands for Innovation for Sustainable Development. As you know, there is a lot of initiatives, projects, platforms going on around the topics of eco-innovation, about green economy, sustainability. And what InnoForestD wants to achieve is like to overcome this fragmentation, to work with these different networks around the globe, and particularly also in Europe, around these topics, and to see how could this be streamlined, how could be the best results come out in order to look at in the implementation of the SDGs, in order to look about the circular economy, and how to bring that together. So quite an ambition, and we have stakeholders, very interesting stakeholders from the academia, but also practitioners, like for instance in this case ICLEI, who comes in with the cities. And here you see the mission in a concise way, as I couldn't put it orally. It's really about bringing together these networks dedicated to innovation for sustainable development, with the aim of reducing fragmentation, but also about looking more into how we could collaborate better, how to engage policymakers, research and development, and also businesses to achieve sustainable development goals. When you registered for this conference, many of you said they wanted to be part of this community of practice within InnoForestD. And here you see also this link. This community of practice is basically about all these topics, including also nature-based, about eco-innovation. The aim is basically, if you're a network that is interested in the practical application of solutions to stimulate transformative local change, then this is the place. So far, many of you clicked that you are interested in joining this community. So what we will do next week, we will also send you an email and invite you again to join this profile net and to sign in. There is already quite some interesting information there on this community, but you can also post questions, and then get feedback from all these different networks. And as I said also in the networking lunch, if you have any specific questions about the project or how to join as a network, then please get in touch also with Fernando from TNO. Fernando, if you just raise your hand that they all know who we are, thank you. Thanks so much. I'm already at the end, but maybe just to one point, if I may say that. You may have seen that there is this other banner here, Transformative Action Award. I really would like to make also some publicity, because there's even a money sum that goes with this award. We are really looking for cities and towns that want to implement transformative actions according to different paths, which can be socio-cultural, socio-technical, or socio-economic, according to different agendas. Basically, what we are looking for is like cities where a mayor, together with its citizens, really wants to transform the city, the town in the long run, and finds innovative ways to do that. And in the long term, then reaches a social return on investment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, for this brilliant and straightforward presentation. I will give the floor to Claudio.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is a real pleasure for me to be here at this conference today. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to speak Italian at such a conference as well, because as I'm sure you're all well aware, normally English is the lingua franca. And Luis Buñuel, a famous Spanish cineast, asked what the link was between Hollywood and the English language, how people communicated in Hollywood. And he was, of course, a great cineast. And he said, well, I speak English, but I don't understand it. So I think that speaks volumes, really. So it's great that we're here talking about biodiversity and we can have linguistic diversity. So thank you very much for organising the interpretation for today. Thank you very much, sir. I'll be very brief. That's pretty much 50% of what I wanted to say, truth be told. The Organic Cities Network, well, it's a network that was founded in Paris in March 2018 by the municipality of Paris. It features global cities such as Paris and Vienna, and small towns and villages with 1,000 inhabitants, and that's one of the characteristics of our network. We have the French village of Correns. It's an organic municipality. They produce primarily wine, all organic, of course. And then Zehan, close to Salzburg in Austria, and there around 90% of the agricultural land is for organic farming. And there are other cities that are exemplary in terms of their environmental policies. Reho in Sweden. It won the European Environment Prize a few years ago. What's the focus of our network? Well, organic farming, first and foremost. We work hand in hand with Pan Europe, and we're a similar kind of network. Thank you very much for inviting us here today. We also work with Ecoli, and I think there are many decisive issues here. And of course, during the discussion, I'm sure these will come to the fore. It's important that we hear your questions, of course, and are able to discuss them. The central point really is school meals and organising supply and demand of school meals, and meals in the public sector in general, and in particular school meals, and also meals in hospitals. So that's an essential part of the food policy in large and small cities and towns. And of course this has an economic impact. I'll just give you an example. The city of Paris is directly responsible for 31 million meals a day that are served in schools. So I'm sure you can imagine here what we're talking about in terms of the impact this has on families, young people, teachers, support staff. It's a very complex issue, is this issue of school meals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudio, for including the language diversity in the discussion. So the floor is to Andrzej.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me, for having me. Sorry. My name is Ondřej Kačaba, and I'm from Czech Republic, Healthy Cities of Czech Republic. And I will briefly present my organization and a little bit of activities we do in terms of participation. So our network was founded in '94, and yeah, I was only 4 years old back then. So and in '98, we received a certification from WHO and UN, and since then we are trying to improve quality of life in cities and support sustainable development. We've been founded by 8 cities, and now we have 130 members, which covers 52% of Czech population. Our members are regions, small towns, big towns, and also municipality districts. Everything we do for our members or our services, we offer tailor-made consultations, project support, media promotion, but most important thing is that we are a platform for sharing experience and good practice. Everything we do is based on SDGs, which we later translate into Czech context on a national level based on Aalborg commitments. And these 10 topics, I will get back to them shortly. Based on this also, we developed a very successful methodology for civic participation. Every year, for a long time, we organize public fora, which are basically round tables, and every table has a topic based on those Aalborg commitments. They are very successful, and yeah, this year it will be almost around 100. Public fora is the discussion with citizens and public servants and politicians about certain topics, so that they can define the problems in their city, and then the local government has to address them for the next year. We also do school and youth forums, which is a little bit similar, but a little bit different methodology, but they are increasingly very successful. That's how we're trying to engage youth and children to kind of increase their sense or feeling of patriotism to their place of birth and to the city they live in, because usually they go to study in Prague, in the capital, and then never come back. So there's this wide problem in the Europe of towns getting older and older and younger people staying in the big cities. In addition, one of our tools is called Emotional Maps. It's very easy. You can just pinpoint a place in the city you live in, a place you like, a place you don't like, a place you don't feel safe in or you feel happy in, and then we just digitalize all the data, and we got very interesting data, for example, for local police, for politicians, and so on. So if you're interested, so I'll be here the whole day, and I can answer any question you got. So thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So you may continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. And I'm also very happy to be sharing the panel with all of you, all of my neighbors here on the table. I think I had there's a presentation that will be gone. So cities are where we live, where everyday life happens. And this is also where we can see the immediate impact of our collective and individual actions in terms of societal transitions. This is also where we have cities, municipalities, be they administrative representatives or elected representatives, and the citizens, being key in transforming the environment in which they live. And it is on this transition that I'm working on, trying to combine both my expertise and experience as a citizen, as a professional. We have leadership, governance, grassroots initiatives, integrated approach, urban planning, empowerment, all these within the paradigm of sustainability and societal transition. These are some of the key issues that cities, city administrations and citizens need to work on together with well-defined mandates, roles, responsibilities within their available agendas and timeframes. And they do so in the given legal, social, societal, cultural, economic contexts that they live in, but that they can also seek to influence and shape. These are some of the key aspects that are very important for me. First one is about learning and exchanging. So learning about the practices that happen in other cities. So today we've already shared lots of experiences, and I'm sure lots of others will still come up. And I'm already jumping onto what Claudio was saying. I've just started working on a network of organic canteens, an URBAC network, where an organic canteen tries to transfer the practice to other cities throughout Europe. And this is really when looking at the learnings from other cities, be they successes or I would say them challenges and learnings rather than the failures that other cities can also learn. And by cities, I speak in generic terms. So it's municipalities on the one hand, but it's also all other kind of activities that can be led by a variety of stakeholders. It's also important for me to move towards mere participation that is too often used as a buzzword, but really to move towards a concrete co-creation of solutions in the city altogether. We often talk about the empowerment of citizens. That's key in many public policies, but we shouldn't forget that there are lots of other stakeholders involved, including elected representatives and people from the administration that also need to be empowered. And all these changes can also benefit from the learnings and the innovations that we have from academic research in terms of conceptual frames and analysis. So today I'm going to share with you some of my experiences and expertise from various research projects and experimentations, from some tools developed more at the local or European level, while seeking to link the theory to the practice, what really happens at the local and national levels towards the European level, and to also making the connection between grassroots actions and strategies and policies. So I really look forward to exchanging with the panelists today, with all of you, and if we don't have enough time during the debate, we'll also have time during the networking lunch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marceline. So this is the time you are expecting. You are part of the discussion, so feel free to ask or add some comments to the amazing presentation that we had today. Who wants to start? Oh, it's time for co-creation. There's a question over there. Please stand and introduce yourself. Okay.
I'll stay sitting, it's all right. Yeah, I'm Nick from the Pesticide Action Network UK. And is it a question or a request? So you might not be surprised to hear that I think one of the most transformative actions that any city, municipality, village, whatever it happens to be, can do is to go pesticide free. Now I've been trying to, in the UK, trying to get the Transition Network interested in the issue of pesticides for the last 10 years. So this is a request, really. I don't think we can have future modern sustainable cities that are still using pesticides. So for all of you, how do we incorporate that into your work? How do we all work together and really push the notion of pesticide-free cities being one of the cornerstones of the cities of the future? And how do we, will you take that on and make it more of a priority within your work and allow us to work with you to deliver that? Not just you, that's for everyone on the panel. And as a sort of supplementary thing, which is about design, is how do we, and for you as well, is how do we, with landscaping, with urban planning and this sort of thing, how can we actually design the need for pesticides out of our cities? But that's a separate question.
So
who wants to pick the question? I think that the question is connected with Ana Huertas or also Marcelino. You want to? Also, thank you. Ana Huertas, you might start.
Yeah. Hi. Well, I think, well, first of all, the reason why transition is not overtly saying, yes, we vouch for pesticide-free, it's not because we don't think it's important or that we're not thinking about it. It's more like we are aware that for the current agricultural system to use pesticides, and not just pesticides, also fertilizers, etc., they continue relying very much on fossil fuels to produce them, distribute them, and use them. And we are hoping that as people gain more and more awareness of how linked it is, health, community, and agriculture, well, just the agro-industrial system, how linked they are, that people will start moving away and demanding that we are pesticide-free. And there are many transition initiatives that are actively working in that area because they are mainly concerned about food, etc. One way in which we could incorporate this more strongly in the work of the municipalities in transition work is in the moment where municipalities and civil society come together to discuss things. It is our job in the project to support the process and not just, of course, let them go where they want to go, but also give ideas and prompts and say, this is something that you could focus on. So this is something that we could bring up much more strongly in order for it to be incorporated in what they take into account when they analyze the situation, the context of their city or municipality.
So thank you, Anna. You want to speak?
Sì.
The floor is yours.
Per rispondere alla domanda.
I just wanted to respond to the question. Organic farming, by definition, if you look at the formal definition and the new regulations, 97-91, and if you look at the European Commission's view, it's been approved by the European Parliament, then organic farming is farming that's pesticide-free, by definition. So in terms of the Organic Cities network, well, of course, this is an invitation that we can respond positively to because we're looking at promoting organic farming. And one of the main issues, together with biodiversity and animal welfare, is, of course, the absence of chemical substances. I'll give you 3 examples of cities that are part of Organic Cities and are living proof of this being a good idea. I was talking about Zehan. Almost 100% of the meadows around the lake there are pesticide-free, and now that lake water is drinkable. And that's a fact. And that has administrative consequences. Of course, then you have Paris. The utilities are owned by the municipality, and they work hand in hand with organic farmers. They've moved from traditional farming to organic farming in order to preserve the drinking water in Paris. This is a very strong example, I think. It's a global example. And I'll give you a 3rd example just to reassure you. Chianti, Greve in Chianti in Tuscany in Italy, 90% of Tuscan wine, Chianti first and foremost, 90% of farmers in Panzano are organic farmers. And the mayor has actually had the water analysed after just 2 years of whole-scale organic farming, and the results were incredibly positive because there was a complete absence of pesticides. Now, of course, I personally work with Peter and other people also at a European level. So this is, I feel personally involved in this. But of course, these are objectives that we can all get behind, and they're pretty evident when you stop and think about it.
I agree with previous speakers, and I just want to add that shamefully in Czech Republic there's a very weak discussion about pesticide-free farming, and there's a discussion about organic farming, but not in the relation with pesticide-free. So I would very much like to increase the awareness, or just mainstream the topic more, or focus it more. So yeah, I would like to share good practice from abroad. Thank you.
Marceline, you can add some thoughts.
I'm just going to rephrase the second question. I'm not sure I got it, but it was in terms of how can we design cities which are pesticide-free, basically. How do you then think about urban planning in these terms? So I'll move beyond the previous debate on how we put it on the agenda, basically. But once this is done, for me, what's key is that there's really co-creation in that, and it's not just a traditional way of doing of urban planners from the administration or outside, really working in their office to think what would be the best. So it's really about co-creating the whole the whole new plan for that. And I'm just going to share with you one concrete example of one of the possibilities to do it. There are many, of course, many approaches, many specialists in that, many cities which have adopted various different ways of doing it. I'm just going to briefly share with you the experience of the URBACT method. So URBACT is an EU program which supports cities which want to develop sustainable policies in an integrated way. Integrated meaning including the economic, social, and environmental aspects on all of the topics that they tackle, but also in a participatory way. And when cities commit themselves in being part of the network, they have to engage strongly with the stakeholders, local stakeholders on a given issue, in order to identify the problems, identify the solutions, and together create the way, establish the way to address these issues, and really what are going to be the strategies, the actions, who will be then involved in these processes. I'm not saying it's an easy task, because it first requires really a strong leadership from the initiator of the process. So, okay, we go for it, and we actually going to work on that together, and we really want to expressing the fact that we want to have in this urban planning that is not only in the hands of the municipality and potentially hired urban planners to do that, but really to open up to other visions, other ways of looking at things, but also from those who are actually in need of an adequate environment for their daily lives. So there is this is the first point. Then the other issue is really to work with the citizens and stakeholders and to identify the best way of doing it. I was just sharing with our moderator during the lunch break that in one of the networks I had a discussion with a city. It was a city with Lithuania. They had a very strong vision. They really want to work with citizens. And they were saying to me, but we do so much. We do so much for them. And we organize events and we do all that. And they don't want to take part in it. Or they want to, but actually once they've taken part in a workshop, they don't want to commit themselves to do anything afterwards. And so that's also the reality. You also have to define, to co-create together the governance model that works for everybody within the given mandate. So who has the mandate to do what? Who has the time to do what? When you're a professional, it's not the same thing as when you're a volunteer. You might have more freedom as a volunteer, but you have less time. You don't get paid when you volunteer. And then it's a question of agenda, time frames. We don't have the same reality in terms of time frames between all the stakeholders. Just to conclude on a positive note, I could talk about it for hours, but just coming from commenting on the URBACT method and experience I've seen, many cities, in the cities who join the networks, you have those who kind of understand what it's going to be about. They know it's going to be some work, and they commit themselves, and they work hard on the projects and really co-create urban planning for 2.5 years. And you have those who have actually no idea about what it is. And after 6 months already, they realize that, well, they will have to change the way they work more transversely, internally, start working with stakeholders. They will have to change the way they communicate amongst themselves. With other people, they will have to change the way they approach things. They will have to get towards a solution-oriented approach. Yet, all those, the two groups of cities, those who were unaware about what it will require, are extremely satisfied about the results after 2.5 years. So it is a long process, it is a challenge, but in the end, everybody feels that the investment, which is a very long-term investment, is highly beneficial. And this is just one of the examples of the way you can co-create urban planning. Thank you.
Many thank you, Marceline, for your inputs, and I'm going to give the floor now to Luis from Ecologistas in Spain.
This year we have published a report about Spanish rivers related with plaguicides. The conclusion was clear. All the Spanish rivers were contaminated with plaguicides. In the case of the river Segura, appears approximately 70 sorts of plaguicides. More or less, the 7% of these are forbidden: DDTs, lindano, and others. Only for this, the necessity of European free glyphosate city are necessary. The next week we public other report about results plaguicides in our food. Only one example. One sample of Chinese tea have 14 different sorts of plaguicides. Is quite surprising for us. This is all.
Luis, I will give space for a final comment from Senator Labert.
Thank you. Yes, I have to say, as has been said, it's not that straightforward. And I think it's great that we've got these pioneer villages and towns who want to take action. And we've seen some excellent examples of this morning. Now, we were in a similar situation in France. There was about 10% of villages and towns that were aiming for to be pesticide-free until we came up with a law. Now, obviously, this affects human health, biodiversity, pollinators, etc. And they were saying that the economy itself wasn't at stake, wasn't going to suffer. And so we did actually manage to come up with a majority for all this to be done. Unfortunately, the microphone has been cut off. The interpreters can't hear. Thank you. And we managed to mobilize citizens in towns and cities who felt empowered, and a lot of initiatives were taken, and they came up with ideas that we didn't have in the beginning regarding urban planning. And there are urban planners, landscape planners, who took this idea on board and said, well, look, we've got the law now, well, we've got to work on this, we are progressive, we have to think about the city of tomorrow, we have to respect the environment, and the water quality is another important point too, right there. And I mean, I don't want to set examples and say that lessons have to be learned, but I think it's clear that NGOs and other organisations have to raise awareness and make it clear that we need to act, put pressure to bear on the EU, for example. I mean, Europe hasn't actually been able to do an awful lot in member states, but at the end, We came up with a law in France, which was adopted there, and we really need to call upon the EU to make sure that this is extended to the whole of the EU. So we need to act at an EU level, but at the same time, we all need to work at a national level as well in our own countries, try to bring about a debate in order to make sure that our parliaments have a say in this. And we need to get public opinion on our side. We need to raise awareness through NGOs, through the press, to make the whole movement unstoppable. And as I said before, if we can obtain zero pesticides in all European towns and cities in the coming 6 years, then we've come a long way, because we're working on agricultural issues as well at the same time. And then there's also the link between food production around towns and cities, and providing food for the inhabitants in towns. And we've set up territorial food projects in France that link up the population with the agricultural areas around them. And again, we're asking for organic farm produce, and I think all of this will help us to speed things up and go in the right direction. Thank you.
So it's time to close. I just want to insist on the following. We need to connect the missing links within agriculture, food and pesticide-free towns. So just give a round of applause to the panelists and to the audience. Thank you so much. Peter, the moderation is yours.
I take over moderation, back the moderation, but not without asking for an applause also for the US moderator, Cecilia Delgado. Thank you so much. It's now time for our last keynote, and I'm very pleased to introduce to you Nicolas Beetz. And listen carefully, because he's an influential man when it comes about the EU urban agenda. Nicolas Beetz was very influential also in the whole discussions around the EU urban agenda, the Amsterdam Pact, that then led to the EU urban agenda. So he will tell you more about what are the EU urban agenda. You heard a bit from Joanna Drake in the morning. And there are partnerships on different topics, very important for cities every year. And the interesting part is also that there is this nice mix of stakeholders involved. So it's not only the cities, the urban, but also the member states and the Commission. And I'm very glad to have you here. Nicolas Beetz is the special urban envoy of the Netherlands, but he has also been ambassador in Europe and outside. So very glad you are here, Nicolas, to tell us a bit about the EU urban agendas, the partnerships, how they are going, but also how these topics of citizen-driven, nature-based, the topics that we talk might be part of future EU urban agendas, of future EU urban agenda partnerships, and a bit of an outlook how this could look in the future EU presidencies. Thank you very much. The floor is yours. Let's see if this microphone here works. Well, you have the choice. Thank you.
And is there a presentation coming? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for the very kind introduction. Actually, I was in this same hall some 3 years ago in the preparation of the Pact of Amsterdam, where we here had a session with the European and Economic Social Committee explaining that we would create somehow a Pact of Amsterdam, an urban agenda for the EU, and we have. So this is the first sort of success. Why is it there? It's already been mentioned, 72% of the Europeans live in cities. It's where it's happening, it's where the problems are, it's where the opportunities are. I don't want to go into that even further, because you know. The aim of the urban agenda, first and foremost, to bring the EU closer to its citizens. This is what it's all about. You are part of the scene which actually connects to grassroots, to small and municipalities, but the city in itself is the organizational entity which is the closest to its citizens. It's where the citizens have confidence. But it's also to empower cities in the EU, because they didn't have a place before that. It's towards the urban agenda for the EU. You can start with basically the EU itself. It's from 6 nations only, which came together out of the rubble of the Second World War. For many of you, long time ago, but I was just born just after that. But it was about European Economic Committee. But in '87 there was a specific responsibility for regional policy acknowledged. Then more and more funds were added. The Union grew. The Committee of the Regions was created. Participation of Committee of the Region in the legislative process. But still not a word about cities. And then we had in 2016 the Pact of Amsterdam establishing the urban agenda for the EU. What is it? It's informal. It's voluntary. And it's multi-level. And it's that which makes it the strongest. Because you have at the table cities, the NGOs, the member states, and the Commission, and the various DGs, and that's what makes it strong. It's about improving the urban dimension in EU law and policy making with 3 key objectives: better regulation, better funding, better knowledge, and it is about partnerships, and this is how it works. It's a broad spectrum of partnership. All the EU member states are there, European Parliament, European Commission, Committee of the Region, CMR, Investment Bank, URBACT, Eurocities, the EUKN, and civil societies. It's a broad spectrum, and that also makes it strong, but also the weakness, because there's so many players involved. Right now, we have 12 partnerships with more than 85 cities, 20 European stakeholders, 28 countries, and as I mentioned, European Commission, Committee of the Regions, CMR, Eurocities and URBACT. It's a big organization. There are now there are hundreds of people involved almost on a daily basis. It's all in the framework of Goal 11, make cities inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. And it's in the framework of the Paris Climate Agreement. And this is what makes me optimistic. This morning we heard Joanna Drake saying that she was really happy about how things are going. And it's only in 2015 that we established the Paris Agreement. But now you see that there is, on the whole, in the European Union, on every level, these goals have somehow reached and they are being implemented. And we are in the framework of doing that. And we had the new urban agenda in Quito, which also was a milestone. And the next Habitat is in another 18 years, so it will take. We still have some time. What are these partnerships? The first were already established in Amsterdam: urban poverty, inclusion of migrants and refugees, air quality and housing. And 3 of them already have created an action plan which was approved at the end of last year. Urban mobility, circular economy, digital transition and jobs and skills were created in Bratislava during the Slovakian presidency, and in Malta we had sustainable use of land, energy transition, innovative public procurement and climate adaptation. And you should not forget that these 4 partnerships, the last 4, only had their first meeting in September last year, so it's not a long-term endeavor. But we have 2 more which have been agreed, and that is in Sofia just recently: cultural heritage and security in public places. How to get involved? Well, the call is just out. The Commission has published a call and saying which cities and countries would like to join. And you can actually adapt. But as a city, you have to be nominated. You have to be nominated either by Eurocities, or by URBACT, or by CMR, or by a country, or by a Committee of the Region. And the idea is that a city who has been nominated represents a network of cities. Usually, it's a city which is already in this framework and is part of a working group within Eurocities or with URBACT, so that you actually can spread the knowledge through to a much larger network, and that is not just a city on its own who participates. Additional topics may be decided in November 2018. Now a few words on the partnerships, and this is the partnership Sustainable Use of Land. And actually there's a representative who's also in this partnership, and you may raise your hand because in the lunch people can also ask questions to you. It focuses on financial models, greening of cities, reducing land take, awareness and capacity, and functional urban areas. And just a word on how this partnership sort of comes about, because the partners, and here they are listed, they come together from all corners of European Union. Bologna is the coordinator, together with Poland, and there's Antwerp, Cork in Ireland, Lille in France, Agüero in Portugal, Stavanger in Norway, Stuttgart, Germany, and Zagreb in Croatia. And then you have all the DGs from the Commission and the countries Cyprus, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Portugal, and Slovenia, and the European Investment Bank, who's there. Now, in order to bring this group together and say, well, what are we going to do? What is this partnership all about? First, you have to get to know each other. First, you have to identify, to see what the solutions are. Because this sustainable use of land, of course, is a topic which is very broadly discussed, but not everywhere at the same level in the European Union. For instance, there is a strong word that in Eastern Europe, sustainable use of land is not directly a topic which comes to the mind of those who are responsible for the public administration. There are, of course, action groups, there are people, but so we thought in this partnership maybe we should have a strong narrative. We should have people who actually spread the message on this and how to do that, and this is what this partnership is also thinking about. Then there's the partnership on climate adaptation. It's coordinated by Genoa. The urban areas are province of Barcelona, city of Glasgow, Trondheim, Potenza, Italy, Lule, Portugal, and Svanto George in Romania. I remember from the first meeting when we had the sort of introduction and climate change was mentioned, and then there was from Lule, they said, yeah, our climate change is represented because the waves are attacking so much the shore. We have differences. In Svanto George, they said, our climate change is because it's so much drier in the summer, so that our harvest is actually affected. In Trondheim, they said, well, we have so much more rain that, so the consequences of climate change can differ very much. So there also, to disseminate what this partnership can actually achieve is something which is still under discussion. What is the aim of the urban agenda? First of all, to be anchored in the mainstream of EU policy. And I'm extremely happy just to have received the regulation on the future of cohesion policy and of the regional development funds. And there, for the first time in a Commission paper, the urban agenda is mentioned. It is mentioned in the framework of the European Urban Initiative, where they group all urban matters together and they will organize things a little bit better, but it makes a direct reference to the urban agenda of the EU. And that is something which is, I think, very, very much needed, and it's one of the successes of the urban agenda for the EU, that now it's actually mentioned. It's to have a firm position on the agendas of future presidencies. We're happy that every presidency really continues. Like we had in Bulgaria, 2 new partnerships approved. In the Austrian presidency, they will continue. But the main focus is on the German presidency, because that will be in 2020, after the lifetime of this Commission, and they already have announced that they are going to think about how to continue with the urban agenda. Because the model is unique, multi-level, where all the levels are actually sitting at the table. But how to continue? Because these themes which have been established, 12 partnerships on all the broad themes and 2 more, they are here to stay. They will not end with the end of a partnership. Energy transition is till 2050 at least. So how to continue this dialogue and how to keep the voice of the cities heard directly with the European Commission, but also from the Commission side, they say we really appreciate this dialogue, because we now are in various cities where we actually feel the problems. It's to be embedded in the multi-annual financial framework. Well, here we can say that in the proposal, right now there is 5% earmarked for urban matters, but it's going to be 6%. So there is an increase. So there also the element of cities is recognized. And we would like to keep the method effective, flexible and informal, pragmatic, with partners working on equal footing. And I think that's a main difference, because when you sit in a partnership with the Commission, you're on equal footing. It's not a lobby organization. You're there, and you can actually discuss how to improve things. What are the results? First of all, it's recognized across Europe. And I have a question for you. How many have actually heard of the Pact of Amsterdam, the EU urban agenda? How many? it's there, but it's not the majority. So we need to do a lot more on that. It has an impact on. It's had an impact on national urban agendas. For instance, in Poland, Slovakia, Portugal, Italy, where actually the cities have come together and discussed how to have a stronger voice in the national policies. The European Commission DGs are coordinating their input for urban affairs, and this has been a major breakthrough, and we believe that this is an achievement of the urban agenda for the EU. Tools and support for cities. There has been created an urban one-stop shop, an urban data portal, Urbis, for investments, the Futurium website, and this is something which I can highly recommend because there you can find the most updated information. And there has been a technical preparatory group for EU urban development matters, and that is in the framework of the annual meeting of Director Generals for urban matters, and we will have next year in the Romanian presidency a ministerial meeting, and that's the direct follow-up of the Amsterdam meeting after 3 years. Now 3 action plans have been delivered and 5 are in process, and examples of actions, and this is something where it very quickly becomes technical, that if you're not exactly in housing, what does it mean to review the current definition of the target group for social housing in the services of general economic interest decision? The aim is to improve legal certainty for public and private social and affordable housing investors. For them, it's a very essential thing. For many of you, it may be something, well, what does it actually mean? The other thing is to establish a European Migrant Advisory Board. It involves refugees and other migrants directly in designing policies, because they are the ones who have the experience on how it works or does not work. What are the actions for the near future? Adoption and implementation of the actions listed in the action plans, and the partnerships have actually allocated action leaders on the various actions. So this will be there in the future. And we are in the process of making a long list of all the effects of the urban agenda for the EU. Because so far it's very difficult to make it tangible. Actually, the question, well, what are the outcome, was already asked when the Pact of Amsterdam was signed. That was on the 30th of May 2016. People came to me and said, yeah, but what are the results? I said, well, it's just been signed. Wait. Let's give it some time. Well, new partnerships will be launched. There will be the informal ministerial conference during the Romanian presidency. And for full details, please go to the website on regional policy, sources, policy themes, urban report, urban agenda. Any questions? That's later. And I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. We are basically coming to an end. Thank you very much. We started with a positive note in Brussels from Joanna Drake, and we ended with a very positive note in Brussels from Nicholas Beetz. So I think the picture, it looks positive. You also heard like all these cities moving together with citizens. So I think there is hope. Action is going on. It's not easy. But here at this stage, I just wanted to thank you for being with us on this journey. We started, well, in Brussels, top down. We went to Malta. We went to Nijmegen, European Green Capital of this year. We went to Oslo, in a way, which is a European Green Capital next year, Beauvais. So we went to all these cities. We heard a lot of stories, people that are behind it, many volunteers, but also mayors then connecting with the citizens, trying to create something. So let me at this stage just express a few thank you. A big thank you to our co-organizer, which is Pan Europe here, and particularly to Seda Orhan, who started this conference off in first place. Then, thank you. Then to the European Economic and Social Committee, who hosted us in the top room in the house. Thank you. And for being the house of the citizens. And hopefully in the future it's easier to get in. And but with all the security, it's quite a challenge to organize events in a new institution nowadays. And therefore, I wanted to particularly thank also my colleagues which are not here. You may have seen at the registration, Silvia, Assalini and Emily, because without them we would still be lost in the transition. So thanks to them. Also to my colleague here, Vasilis, and then there was also Anja Rock, who couldn't be here with us. So thanks to all of them. And now from my side, I would just say thanks also to the speakers and to the panelists. Hope they are still a bit around at the lunch break so that you can talk with them if there are any questions. So thank you all. Enjoy the lunch, share your stories, and together let's make this Europe and the cities greener, bring in more nature. Thank you very much.